Back. We do have a lot of topics to cover today, and frankly, I don't think I'm going to have time to get in depth on all of them. So let's just spend 1 minute recapping the last several months in the world of poker. Man turns $500 into $1.1 million in a single tournament. YouTube has been taking down many poker players' videos. Blackout restrictions with CBS anger PokerGo fans who feel like watching all the action on PokerGo should include all the action. Mercy are looking more and more like Tom Hanks from Castaway. PokerStars fires parts ways with Daniel Negreanu. Triton Poker has a massive tournament series. Sam Soverel probably angled someone, but maybe didn't. I think we should get an expert in here for analysis. ACR has more bot drama. I'm not really honestly following that one, but I'm assuming Joe Ingram is still losing sleep over it, so I don't know, ask him. Bitcoin has been on an insane rally, and we are all pumped to oh, wait, that's the wrong channel. And finally, Doug Polk retires and breaks all our hearts. So plenty to get to today, and we're going to pick a few stories out and cover them a little more in depth, but I want to let you guys know what I've been up to lately. I just wrapped up a 5-week trip to Europe, went to a lot of different places. I went to England, saw London for a little bit, even though I was sick out of the gate. Saw my family. My mom's side of the family was actually British, so I went and visited them. I went to Scotland and toured the distilleries of the scotch that I've loved to drink for the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, so that was awesome as well. And then we went to a few places over in France and Italy, went to Paris, Rome, and the Amalfi Coast. So it was a fun trip. It was good to take a little vacation, step away from things for a little bit, but I'm back and I'm ready to make some vids. I also spent the first week back making some Upswing Lab content, myself and Ryan Fee. Reviewed a few of our members' tournament hand histories where we went through some of their biggest spots and deep runs. So that should be up later this week. If you're interested in learning from myself or Ryan Fee, you can check out the Upswing Poker Lab. Let's kick things off by talking about the World Series of Poker. Now, every year there's a lot of excitement coming into the World Series. In fact, I'd say most poker players view this as peak poker time during the year. But this year there's a special buzz in the air as it is the 50th annual World Series of Poker. The Rio is having some special events based around this, and there's some special branding. Basically, it's not going to really affect most of you other than the 28,000 entries for the Big 50. Big 50. Getting into some news, let's talk about the Sam Soverel hand that occurred at the 50K final table at the World Series of Poker. Now, you've probably already heard about this hand, but essentially, with 4 players left in the tournament, Sam opens in the card with Jack-9 suited. One of the players behind goes all in. And now the big blind, Ben Heath, has Ace-Queen suited and is in a very tough spot here because even though he's probably going to end up calling with this hand, he not only has to be ahead of the guy who jammed, but then also factor in that sometimes the cutoff, Sam, will have a good hand. Now, this is an interesting situation because Sam can actually make money by telling Ben his hand, which is a weird spot in poker. You rarely can make money by doing that. But if he lets Ben know that he is going to fold here, well, Ben can then call with some hands otherwise might be folds. Hands like Ace-Jack suited, maybe a hand like 7s or 8s. Basically, hands that are on the fringe can call. And if he does do that, then it's very good for Sam because now the other player busts. You know, and Sam can jump up a pay jump, and when that happens, everyone makes money. So basically, by folding early, Sam takes EV from the player who's all in and splits it to the remaining players. Before we get too far in the analysis, let's go ahead and roll the clip so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about.
And Wsop's gonna need some help.
Time extension being used there.
That was the carry catch. Awesome. Did you not throw something forward?
He threw it's understandable, but yeah, I mean, it was the time.
Yeah, but this is kind of an outrageous spot to do it. I mean,
well, here's what happened. Ben Heath was actually exercising a time extension. Sam Soverel saw him throw it in there, thought that Heath was folding his hand, and folded and turned.
And I just thought it was on me.
As a result, Yurosov appears very agitated because it makes it a little bit easier for Ben Heath to make the call, does it not, Scott? Knowing what's going on with Soverel.
A lot of people have been angry at Sam for this, including Isaac Haxton, who said that this should result in a DQ. He was very angry and upset about this and thinks that they need to draw a much harsher line on when people, might be angling in spots like this to protect the integrity of the game. And while I understand what Ike is saying, I do think it's a little bit of an overreaction because sometimes accidents will happen. But the question is, was this an accident or not? Let's take a closer look.
Time extension being used there.
When I first watched this video and I saw the reaction after he folded, I have to say it looked pretty bad for Sam. He's just so over the top, just putting his head in his hands, like way too over the top acting after this fold. If you had mistakenly folded out of turn, I think you would have been like, oh, my bad. Like, I'm sorry, guys. I shouldn't have done that. I don't think you'd be like, or, whatever Sam did, basically over the top reacting. That usually says that someone premeditated it. They knew that if people caught on, they'd have to act to look innocent, whereas people that actually get caught in the act tend to look a little bit more confused and unsure and genuinely sorry. I do have one thing I want to say in Sam's defense, which is sometimes when the lights are on you and you're in a big spot or there's a lot of money at stake, you can look bad when you're really just confused as to what's happening. And I know this firsthand because of a hand that happened to me when I played on a high stakes cash game, where I was playing at the Aria and I won a very small pot for the stakes, but it was still a few $1,000s. And I looked down at the flop as I'm collecting my chips, and someone says, hey, there's 2 queens of clubs out there. And I look back at the flop and I'm like, 2 queens of clubs? There's a spade and 2 clubs. And then I look at it and I realize that there are 2 of the exact same card on the board. And I remember being like, holy shit. And like looking at the board, like really confused, and I'm looking at other people. And I remember, and we'll show you the clip now of when I did this before.
And Coleman makes the call. 6,400 going to the flop.
Check.
And we see an ace, queen, queen, but I thought we saw 2 queen of clubs. Coleman, Polk takes it down there, but that was really interesting. I thought we saw 2 queen of clubs on the flop.
I don't understand what you're in. He doesn't want what?
There's 2 queen of clubs.
Oh my God! What the?
Wow. Wow. Well, that's definitely a dead hand. That's just for sure the rule. It's as if the hand never happened. Those came out of that.
I remember like rewatching it and saying like, I don't really like how I look there. It's like I feel like I look like I knew, and I was checking other players if they saw that too. But in the moment, I was just super confused. There are 2 queens of clubs. What does that guy think? I have no idea what's going on here. And so sometimes in these spots, I do think maybe, maybe you might look a certain way that doesn't necessarily represent what actually happened. And so that gives me a little bit of sympathy for Sam, just having a spot where, no one called me out for that, and it was only a $2,000 or $3,000 pot, or I won $2,000 or $3,000 that I paid back. But the point is, I remember seeing that and not liking how it looked. So you have to remember a little bit in some of these situations that these are huge spots with a lot of money on the line, and people are watching, and you might not always be happy with how you look. I did watch part of Joe Ingram's podcast where Sam came on and talked about the angle. All in all, I think that Sam's points were sort of weak. He kicked it off talking about how he didn't think Ben would pump fake him, and some people pump fake. And then he also talked about how, he was basically just surprised this had happened. And he also talked about like wanting to play fast, and he's a guy who really likes to play fast, get a lot of hands in. And like all of these excuses are kind of weak. Like to me, I think what he should have said is, I made a mistake, I was wrong. And I legitimately thought that the time chip was a chip to call, which is believable. And, I'm sorry that it hurt the other player. That I think was the correct answer. I don't think you have to go into a story about pump faking people and like, he's a good kid, he's not a good kid, I play fast, like I want to get a lot of hands in. Like, sure, these things might matter to Sam, but I think at the end of the day, whether it was an accident or not, you really did hurt the other player, and so you should be a little more direct with that. The question that this entire incident begs is, what should happen when someone folds out of turn and another player is all in, either at a final table or maybe even in earlier stages of the tournament? And I think that the answer is there should be a fairly harsh penalty that is enacted regardless of what they think your intention is. And this is kind of where I'm going with this. Basically, whenever you have it come down to someone gets to look at the player and be like, yeah, he meant it, or no, he's good, or like, I don't like when we have human error and human judgment put into a spot that allows for people that are maybe looked upon fondly to get away with things where random people or disliked people cannot. It should be fair and it should be consistent. So what I would propose if I was in charge of making rules, and I'm not, would be if you're at a final table and a player is all in and you fold out a turn, you get a 3-orbit penalty. Make it clear. Okay, when people get to the table, tell them that. Tell like the new players, your first final table, this is how it works at the final table. Because if you do it like that, then Sam would get a penalty. He'd walk away from the table. 3 orbits would go by. He would be angry at himself, but then it would be fair, right? And so maybe that hurts the player who's all in still, but it still hurts Sam so much that it's just not worth making that play. There needs to be something like that put in. Maybe it should be 2 orbits. Maybe it should be once you're in the money, not at the final table. There's all kinds of ideas as to, maybe it should be at any point in the tournament. I'm not sure. But the point is, I think that the World Series should have a set and uniform rule strategy for this spot. It shouldn't just come down to, oh, he's good, or like he's a high roller, or he's not, or he meant it, or he didn't, or it was an accident. It should just be a rule. Then it can be simple. We can move on. We don't have to fucking talk about this shit anymore. Moving on to our next story, Jungle Man stars in softcore porn acting. I can't tell if this is a really slow news cycle or a really good one. Okay, on to our real next story. I wanted to briefly talk about this because it was a hilarious incident that happened. But apparently a few weeks ago, or maybe more like a month ago at this point, Randall Emmett owed 50 Cent $1 million, and 50 was getting pretty sick of Randall not paying. 50 said that he had until Monday to get him his money, hashtag money by Monday, and showed all of the chat logs between Randall and him where he keeps calling him Fofty instead of 50. Now, I assume that he's just misspelling it, but maybe there's a nickname here. I really don't know. But the memes are so good. So good. So good that 50 Cent even started selling I'm Sorry Fofty t-shirts, which I have to imagine made not very much money. Who would wear that? Honestly, like look at it. Who would? Can't imagine someone wearing that. Then again, I can't imagine someone wearing a, hey guys, I'm not here for the tournament shirt either, but here we are, so take it for what it's worth. After this, some other people had made some claims Randall owed them money too, or that he was slow paying them. And look, like, I don't want to get too deep in here because it's not really that interesting, but pay your debts and don't take loans from people if you can't pay them back. I see so many irresponsible actions with money from both sides, from the lender or the person who's actually being loaned the money. Just be a good person, pay your debts, and don't be careless with your money and try to avoid this happening. Now, it's a little different with Randall just because he is a well-known person and a seemingly successful person, but sometimes those are the images that can get you scammed. In fact, I kind of remember when I did a trade with Brad Booth thinking, how could this guy not be legit? I just saw him put those 3 sweet bricks of 100K stacks down on the table versus Phil Ivey. This guy had to be legit. He wasn't. And I paid the price. And it wasn't that expensive of a lesson. I mean, it was still a sizable hit for me at the time. But all in all, the point is you learn and make sure that you're careful with your money, guys, because you never know who might not pay you back. In unrelated news, our next topic is Elia Lesra winning a bracelet at the World Series of Poker. Oh, no, wait, I guess that's related. I always get this mixed up. Elia Lesra did win the event, though, that I haven't looked up and don't know how much it was for, but I imagine that there were people who were extremely happy. This, of course, being Elia Lesra's fans. Moving on, I have decided to play a couple of tournaments this summer. I know a lot of you guys are not happy that I don't play much poker anymore, but I did decide I want to get at least a couple events in. I played the 10K heads up, and I'm going to play the main event as well. Now, I'm sorry, guys. I know a lot of you guys want me to play a lot of events, but that's just not really my deal anymore. In fact, frankly, I would prefer to play no events, but I'm mainly doing it because So many of you guys just are excited to see me play, and I feel legitimately bad sometimes when my fans come up to me, or like at the airport the other day, they come up and ask me and say, like, you know, what are you playing for the series? And like, I feel bad saying I'm not playing, to be honest with you, because I know a lot of you guys, or probably most, if not all of you guys, are following me from poker, and you know, I feel it makes me sad. But the point is, getting back on track here for a sec, I am going to play a couple of events. That's really all I'm planning on playing this year. Hopefully we can have deep run in the main, but frankly, I've been enjoying not playing poker, and that's probably what things are going to look like for some time to come. Our next topic I want to cover briefly, YouTube has been taking down some videos of YouTubers in the poker genre. Now, it seems like it's mostly hit people like Jaime Staples, Jeff Gross. I think Brad Owen and Andrew Neeme might have had a couple of videos taken down. But I think the main guys who were hit were people who used to be sponsored by PokerStars. And I think this is really a YouTube crackdown on linking out gambling sites, which makes sense. YouTube is primarily a younger audience, tons of kids on YouTube. I can see them not wanting gambling sites linked out. But I feel like they should be a lot more clear. What are the specific guidelines here? What can I and what can I not do? Also, maybe there should be something where if people, you know, agree that they're old enough to watch this content, or there's some kind of verification process, you can link these things out. The main problem is when these media sites, these media outlets start just deciding willy-nilly, we're going to can this guy and we're going to get rid of this, we're going to leave this guy. It sets a kind of dangerous precedent. You know, what's your future like? What if your entire future is based around, you know, making content? You're just so at the mercy of these platforms. And so I do think they should do a little bit more to be fair to people, to keep people, to stay in touch with the content creators, and not just take away, you know, 100 Jaime Staples videos because they don't like opening chests on PokerStars. Actually, that one made it through somehow. $10 cash! Just good content. Even though I didn't personally have any videos taken down, it's still important that as a community that we say we're not okay with this, because if it can happen to some people seemingly randomly, well, then it could happen to someone else, and before you know it, all your favorite content creators are gone. So, you know, support Jaime Staples through this. I think he has kind of figured out what's going on with it. Support guys like Jeff Gross. Support the people on the platform that are losing their content, and you know, let YouTube know that you're not okay with them doing that, because if we band together, we at least can fight to try and make a difference. Last up, I wanted to talk about this story for a second because it's a pretty insane story. Basically, a player turned $500 into over $1.1 million playing a World Series of Poker event. That player was Femi Fashikin, who won the tournament, which had over 28,000 entries. 28,000! This is the biggest live poker tournament that's ever happened. What a truly insane run. It even capped off with him winning with his final hand, aces. It's a fitting hand to end with. This really is a spectacular win. Probably life-changing money. Hard to know for sure. I don't know the guy at all. But the main thing that I want to talk about here today is, should we have these low buy-in tournaments? Now, I tweeted about this the other day, and a lot of people got really upset at me. I tweeted saying that I didn't think they should have $500 type tournaments at the World Series of Poker. And I had two main reasons for thinking that. The first and more important reason is I don't think the Rio is properly equipped to handle that many people. If everyone could get in easily and they had all the tables set up and things were starting on time, it would be great, okay? Then I'm fine with having a bunch of them. But they weren't. You had some flights that started 6 to 7 hours late. You had some stoppages where players had to stop and no one knew what time they would resume. Dinner breaks changed all the time. The parking lot was completely packed and it was hard even to get into the Rio. If you want to go to the break in the if you want to go to the bathroom during the break, sometimes people had to wait the entire break to even have a chance to make it. You couldn't move, packed into the halls. They had people playing in the bowling alley. They were setting up tables all over the place. And look, like, you know, from a pure absurdity, from the absurdity of it, that's great, right? If you're making content, if you want to make jokes about it, it's good content. You know, absurdity makes for entertaining content. But as a player, I do think that you should have like some basic, you know, some just basic things like having enough time to use the bathroom and take a little bit of break during the break, being able to park somewhat close to the venue and walk in, being able, you know, I'm not asking for a ton here, guys. Like, if they could facilitate it, I'd be more on board with the entire thing. And then my second reason is, and this isn't as important, you know, I think back to myself and my poker career. You know, I don't know what happened along the way, but now, like, some people are like, oh, you're just some rich asshole who doesn't know what it's like to be broke. Like, What the fuck are you talking about? Like, I started playing poker with like 10 or 20 bucks, you know? I started the actual lowest stakes. When I turned old enough to be able to play these events, I couldn't play a lot of them, right? Because I didn't have the money. I didn't have people who could buy pieces of me. I wasn't that good. You know, I had to work really hard to get to a point where I was even able to play these events to have that option. It really meant something to me. It meant that I worked through and got to that place. And it's not like there are no other events in town for small stakes tournaments. The Venetian has events going constantly, so does the Wynn. There are a bunch of places that have other buy-ins that people can play. I'm not saying they shouldn't have small stakes tournaments, guys. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think World Series of Poker events should be prestigious. And I think that it should be something that you strive to one day play in. Maybe some people don't agree with that. They think that anyone should be able to play in a World Series event because like they should just be for everyone. And it's headed that direction whether I like it or not. My main takeaway is this. I think a few of these are great. I think a few of these events, if they could be run, you know, in a better fashion where you didn't have these super whack times where stuff's happening all over the place and setting up tables and bowling alleys and getting dealt a joker in a tournament. You know, if they can not have those types of things happen, I'm for running a few of these. But I don't want us to totally lose sight of what the World Series of Poker was about. The World Series of Poker was not about any person in the world ponying up small amounts of money to play in a gigantic clusterfuck. It was about the best and the brightest poker players coming together to do battle in Las Vegas. And I do think that it's okay to have both sides of the spectrum, but I don't want us to totally lose the allure of what the World Series of Poker was originally supposed to be. But you know, maybe this whole thing is just too exciting. It's so exciting that we have to get down there and play ASAP. Maybe this is just what the poker world needed, and god damn it, I gotta get down there and see it for myself. I'll see you guys there.